Hello, beautiful moms and entrepreneurs. This is a place where we come together to learn, grow, and inspire. So sit back, relax, and let's get started. Hello, Unbreakable Mompreneurs. My name is Charisse Walker, your host, and today I'm here with Jenna Hatch. Today, I want to keep it real. We've talked a lot about all these topics about how to grow your business, how to do this, what to do. But today I'm excited because I feel like we're sisters because we're kind of going through the same type of things. And I was actually editing a show and basically we're talking about ADHD. And so there's an episode that's talking about that. And I realized I've really let it get to me lately. And I mean, you know, we all have these peaks and valleys. And if anybody says everything's going great all the time, I don't believe them. And yes, like my business is always doing well, but it could always do better, or I could always wish that it wasn't doing as well sometimes. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about who you are. So introduce yourself, and then we're just going to take it off from there.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Charisse, thank you first and foremost for having me on. I was super pumped to come onto your podcast because like you already told your listeners, we have just been organically talking about life and being a mother and being an entrepreneur. And I agree. I feel like soul sisters, there's a connection there. But yeah, so a little bit about me. I was born and raised in New York. I like to joke that New York chewed me up and spat me out. I'm like an over emotional person. I do have ADHD, and that's, diagnosed later in life. That's where that over emotionalness comes from, right? But I've always said what I've taken from New York is like hustle, grind, and customer service, right? Like I feel like no one could beat me at those things. So growing up, funny enough, I never really had career goals. Like my one goal in life was to become a mom. And, I was always kind of searching for it. I'm a firm believer in everything happens for a reason. I was living in Colorado for a couple of years, ran out of money, needed to move back to New York. And that's when I met my husband. So like firm believer, right? But once I met my husband, we got married, we had a baby. I checked that mom box and I was like, okay, crushed it. What do I do now? Right. I didn't really have any other plans for myself, although I did go to school for education. My degree is in earth science, but I didn't want to be a teacher either. So I ended up dropping the education major and spending a majority of my 20s like figuring out what I wanted to be when I grew up. And funny enough, something similar to tarot cards, by the way, they're called angel cards. One of the Reiki masters at a med spa I worked at, she came in and she was like, let's do these cards. And I have like a deck this thick. I pulled the one card that says be an educator. And I instantly burst out into tears. But I was like, I don't want to be a teacher. And she's like, that's not what it says. It says be an educator. You could be a public speaker. I was a dance teacher at the time. So anyway, as I'm trying to like figure out what I want to do, I got into like the sales world and I noticed that maybe it's that ADHD superpower, right? But I started like checking off milestones and boxes and climbing the ladder faster than everybody else to my own horn, right? But as I was checking these career boxes now, right, I was like, there has to be something more. There has to be something more. And so I kept just kind of chasing and growing. And I made the joke before we hit record, like, if you look at my resume over the years, I like to say it's trash because it may look to people like I'm just job hopping, right? But I always tell people, if you look closely, there's one common thread in it, which is I always want to do better for myself. I'm always trying to climb the ladder, moving on to bigger and better opportunities. So as I was in my early 20s, just wanting to be a mother, once I checked that box, I switched my mindset to like, let's go crush it in the job world. Mm-hmm. And I finally start climbing the ladder and I become the breadwinner of our family for years. I would say starting in 2019. And in 2022, I decided to make a career move into the tech industry. I don't know if anybody knows what happened in 2022 in the tech industry, but I made it a whopping 8 months before my number was up and I was part of the layoffs. Mm. So here I was finding myself like without a job, no income coming in now, as I just worked my butt off to get here. I've got how old was he at the time? My 6-year-old son at the time. Like I said, I was breadwinner. So I started freaking out. but that also gave me enough pause to be like, what do I want to do with my life? And when I looked at everything, it was business advisor. Okay. But I'm not dumb. Everyone and their mom is a business advisor these days, right? And I was just like, okay, that's not a smart move. So I just kind of like pumped the brakes on that a little bit. And I started applying for roles that were similar to business advisor. And I got synced up with an Australian outsourcing company, and they outsourced to the Philippines. I kind of really loved what I was doing there, because what I got the opportunity to do was talk to business owners, figure out where they're struggling, where they need help, and essentially give advice. But the cherry on top was I then had manpower to execute these pipe dreams, right? It wasn't just business advising, but it's like, let's come up with a plan. And now let's integrate a person into your business to execute that plan. So it's kind of like best of both worlds for me. Fast forward a little bit. That's like a story for another time, Charisse. We'll talk after. But the company I was working for basically didn't have any internal processes in place. And I kept trying to implement, and they just weren't adopting company-wide and whatnot. And so I ended up opening up my own business about a year later. I officially launched my business April 2024, and we are right back on the struggle bus. Like, we are right back like where we were 10 years ago. I told you earlier as well, I woke up earlier this week to our bank account being in the negative. And I was like, not again. Right? We went from, oh, do we want to buy this new couch? Oh, do we want to book this vacation? Do we want to buy our son something that he absolutely doesn't need because he already has everything, without thinking, right? We went from being able to do things to literally going negative in our bank account. I now personally have my own business. I work 2 side jobs, and those are for things so that I can pay for my son's aftercare, so I can pay for his sports. And that's why, kind of bringing this whole thing full circle, I was so excited to come on your podcast to really talk about balancing being an entrepreneur with being a mother, being a wife, being a partner, someone. It's a struggle. It is a struggle. And I actually love what you said before about where life isn't perfect. We're upset when our business isn't doing well. And sometimes we're upset when it's doing too well. And I love that part, because it's like when it's doing too well, it's almost overwhelming. You can't keep up. Right. And I'm just like, oh, slow down. Like we all just got here. And that really resonated with me as well. Cause it's not that we're never happy, right? That's not it, but it's just everything comes with its challenges.
Oh yeah, it does. And that's why when they talk about having affairs and stuff, I'm like, just give it a little bit of time, because the grass is not greener on that other side of the fence. Like, don't do it. Or sometimes quitting your job, it is the best thing. And so I'm not going to use that analogy, but you never know. Like right now, my business is probably doubling what it's done in the first 6 months of the year. Like, I'm doing all of that in the 2 months right now. And it's crazy. Yeah, I'm grateful, but I'm constantly bombarded. And so every time my phone rings, I'm just like, oh. And yes. I don't like feeling like that. And so yesterday I came home, and normally I'm like getting all the stuff done because I have so many things I need to do. I literally curled up in a ball on the couch. Now keep in mind I'm sick, and so it probably doesn't help. And I didn't do anything. I watched TV and I didn't do anything. And I'm like, okay, this is not me. I got to snap out of this. I got stuff to do. But I think sometimes it's good to take that self-care. And I say that after I just got back from a week vacation, but it was not a vacation. It was,
no.
we were so busy.
I have had so many people share in that sentiment, specifically after this holiday weekend. Yeah. Yeah. I know me personally, setting up the tree, right?
Yeah.
Setting up the tree. We literally, our elf on the shelf, set up our tree and said, okay, guys, I got this part done for you. Now you decorate it. That's what our elf did for us, because let's keep in mind, Charisse, like right after Thanksgiving, you're supposed to put up your tree. But that didn't happen this weekend. And then Monday, I was dead to the world. And today's Thursday, right? So I needed a vacation from our vacation. It wasn't a vacation. We were watching our children. We were cooking. We had family over. And that's not a vacation. So I'm right there with you. I think I crawled up on a ball and I wasn't sick.
Well, and the crazy because I turned the big 50, right? And then the very next
Congratulations. Happy
I know,
birthday.
I know, thanks. And then 2 days later we go on this trip. We're gone all this time. I come home sick, and then, like I have a client appreciation event. I always recommend get together with your clients if they're local. And then next week my kids are turning, my twins, my oldest kids are turning 25, and then you got Christmas. Plus add to all the chaos of the clients. And so things are good. Like I can't complain. I'm very blessed.
Right.
But sometimes you're just like, oh. And if I had more systems and processes set up like I used to, because I'm building my team, so now I have more stuff to do, and so it's just life is crazy. And I love that you talk about how if you were to look at your resume, it sucks. Like you just be chaos. But I think that that's where you are where you're supposed to be, and I love that you're so honest and open about that. You talked about how your business is doing great. You mentioned off camera, you didn't say on, where you were talking with a friend who's also a client, and you're talking about how your bank account's in the negative. And she's like, oh, so you just need my money. And you're like, oh, no.
Yes. Yeah. She was like, I literally called her for payment information. And I was just, again, talking with my friend because what I told you before was I'm an oversharer.
Yeah.
I'm an oversharer, and I think we all should be a little bit more comfortable with it because the thing is, like, it's not all unicorns and rainbows, right? I know that we're all going through this just in different capacities, right? And so I'm a person that likes to talk it out with people. Like, if I could brighten your day a little bit, like that fills my cup, right? So I'm an oversharer. So I'm talking to my friend who's also a client, and I'm like, oh yeah, my bank account went negative. She's just, oh, so you're just calling me because you need my money? And I said, oh, no. My business account is solid. I also told her something I didn't tell you, like credit cards, right? I have my business credit card. I'm building my line of credit. Now that I'm almost 40, like I understand how credit works now. I want the biggest credit limit. I want to use a certain percentage of it. I want to pay it on time, pay the whole thing off if I can. We get it now. We live and learn. On the personal side of my life, my credit cards, I cannot pay off in one shot. Those are being racked up as we speak. Okay. But with my business credit card, I'm doing so well in my, like, again, this is not a toot my own horn moment, but it's like I'm doing so well in my business where we can rack up that credit card to $2,000-$3,000 and I can pay it off the next month. She's saying, like, oh, you need this. No, that's for the business. If I could take all of that and put it in my own personal bank account, that would be wonderful. But these are two completely separate entities, right? And that's something that I feel people also have to, or they should understand about balancing your personal life and your professional life, right? It's like make the right moves in your business because that's going to pay off, right? Ultimately, as your business grows, your personal life will get there too, right? Mm-hmm. But we have to make sacrifices sometimes. But yeah, I mean, like I said, I think we're all in this world in one way, shape, or another.
Well, and it's interesting because when you talk about business, like if you were to look around our house at a lot of like we have a trailer and we have other things that my company paid for. And so I'll talk to my husband, we're talking, I'm like, well, actually, Shocker Properties owns that. And he's like, oh, Shocker Properties, and he starts saying, yeah, they own everything. And I'm like, well, you need to understand. I mean, those are business expenses. We use it for business. And so when you think you can just go do something with it that's not really business related, let's talk about that. It's very interesting to understand that. And especially you who was the breadwinner, because I was too, about that same time, that 2022, I told my husband to quit his job, which I dreamed of being a mom and a stay-at-home mom forever. And there was one day, oh yeah, like my first marriage, 15 years, I did not get to be that stay-at-home mom. The second marriage, I did. And for 2 years, I mean, it was fantastic. And then I was starting to get a little stir crazy. And so, well, and no, that's not true. We had to go back to work. That's another episode, another story. But so finally it was doing well enough where he was actually being mistreated horribly at work. And I'm like, just quit. He's like, are you serious? I'm like, yeah, just come to work with me, just quit. And we won't go into the details of that, but it lasted for about a year, a little less. And he got a phone call and I said, you're taking it.
I need to interrupt you for 1 second because let's go back to the fact that we're soul sisters.
Yeah.
It was 2020 when my husband I was out with a referral partner, and my husband texted me. He was in a terrible situation at work, and he goes, "Do I have permission to walk out?" And I'm sitting there like, oh my goodness. Okay. And I was just laughing because I don't know about you, but if roles were reversed, he would have come home and I would have been like, guess what? I'm jobless. Like, I wouldn't have asked permission. I would have been like, screw this, I'm out. Right. So I'm sitting there looking at this text and I'm like, wow, I was actually given the courtesy of him asking me if he could walk out because he's that miserable. And I was like, yep, do it. Because again, I was able to support us. I said, quit. So he walked out immediately. 2020 hit. Okay. So he quit right before 2020 hit. And I was like, oh my gosh, had you not quit, we would have been solid. But everything happens for a reason because 6 months later, something like that, our AC breaks down. And I am the insurance agent for our AC technician. And he comes, he's like, oh yeah, I'm looking for another guy. I'm like, I have a guy right there. Take him. And now they've been working together since 2020. And so everything happens for a reason. But I think that's hilarious. As your husband was in a bad situation, so was mine. And they were like, yeah, we got you.
Yeah.
But then
everyone has a different type of personality is what I've realized. And he has fantastic qualities that everybody needs. And he and I are not the same person, which is like we worked very well together. So once we figured that out and how to work it, then great. But I think that it's important to understand too that uncertainty is okay, because that forces you to then figure out something, or not even figure it out, but take a step. And I think a lot of times, because I was thinking about this, 5 years ago is when my life completely changed. I hired a coach that blew my mind of the reality of what could be, right? And then I made the mistake of a blessing of going to a conference, which blew my mind even more. So it's like now I have this like a force under me that's just forcing me to go. However, it's like I'm at this path, and which road can I take? Because I have my podcast, which I absolutely love. It's like my passion project. I have my book that I just wrote. It's over there. And then I have like my real estate and my lending, like all these different things that I can do. And it's like, if I were to go gung ho on one, it would be phenomenal.
The park. I know.
Yes. Because I love your 3 things you talk about. Grind. What were they?
The hustle, grind, and customer service.
Yeah. I love that. I'm like, okay, wait, that's my motto. And so,
Yes.
I mean, I think that any of us, we could all do that, because as an entrepreneur, you have that underlying drive and you just want to take off and go. And so many people are afraid to. And it's like, okay, when you're in a situation where, okay, dang, my husband's jobless and now I need to support the family, it forces you to take the steps that you need. Whereas if my husband can support us, which he can again, but I'm not okay with that, then we could totally, it forces you to
slack off. I can absolutely slack off. And truthfully, in a way, I still do. I also find that to be hilarious. We can't get into it. We don't have enough time, but I don't even want to tell you how many website domains I own, because, and literally 2 days, no, I'm sorry. That was just yesterday. It felt like 2 days ago, because I woke up at 3:30 a.m. And fun fact, when you own a company where I hire virtual assistants from the Philippines, 3:30 a.m. is 5:30 p.m. for them. So I was like, oh, I had the most genius idea 2 days yesterday. And I literally messaged my VA, and she was like, hello, early bird. And I was like, no, I'm gonna go back to sleep. But I needed to get this out of my brain. And I came up with another idea. I think that was idea number 5. And she was like, we need to prioritize and we need to slow down, because I'm doing the same thing I'm trying to build this one. And I know if I just focus on one, I would probably be a lot further than where I am right now. But it's just like, I want to see them all build, so that there's also different motives for it too, right? Like, depending on where you are in your business and what you have going on in your personal life. And if you're juggling, some of these are going to be immediate cash, which is something that I need right now.
Yeah.
right? While other ones, so like if I work on ones that will give me immediate cash, that will almost free up some of my mental space
Mm-hmm.
because I'm not fully worrying about our finances to be able to work on the longer journey to get, to get there. So that's kind of another reason for me going kind of all over the place and trying to build up multiple things at once.
But I think that in all of my coaching and even my schooling, because I have a master's in business, that you go after your low-hanging fruit, right? And so whatever can make you the money the fastest. And so when I was hiring a coach, I'm like, I don't know which one. They said, what can make you the most money the fastest? And go after that. And once you do that, I have a guy that I know, he literally builds up the business, 60% of the business. That's it. Then he hires the C-suite, and it can be fractional, whatever. And he has them take it from there. And then he starts on his next business. But if you think about it, because I thought, okay, in July was the last time I actually fired one of my coaches, finally, after 5 years. But here we are. I remember sitting in that room, committing her to do some things. And now we're in December. Okay, that went by really, really fast.
Yeah. Yeah, I know.
If you don't write things down, if you don't have a plan, if you don't have a target, if you don't have like daily action steps to get you there, 6 months is going to fly by and then nothing's going to happen. And so it's like, what can you focus on right now? And only focus on that. Put the other stuff on the back burner. It really is true because I tried to do 3 different things. I'm like, okay, I can't. And then, oh, that's right. Hi, kids.
Right. My business coach, but you said the way that he put it for me is, Jenna, you have too many experiments going at once. You need to focus on like 1 to 3 experiments, give it a time frame.
Yeah.
And then if it's working, 2 feet in, and if it's not, move on. But something else that you said that really resonates with me, especially with balancing and maybe ADHD and momming, crawling up on the ball and sleeping on the couch. As long as you can move the needle a little bit, right? Move the needle a little bit. There have been months where I feel like I'm failing, right? I'm like, oh my gosh, I didn't get any sales this month, but also I'm not paying for a lead generation platform. Like that's one of the reasons why. So I'm like completely referral based right now. It makes sense.
Yeah.
But I've looked back being like, oh my God, I totally failed myself. And then I talked to my business coach and he's like, excuse you. You did this, you did this, you did this. And he was like, you may not have made 5 additional sales, but you're moving the needle. And that's really what matters, because if you're having the bad day, get one thing done. Just get one thing done. And if you can't get anything done that day, that's okay too. Just try to put 2 the next day, right? Like one of the sayings that I love is just like, be better than you were yesterday, right? I have 1,000,001 different sayings, but yeah, I think that part that you said before also really resonates with me.
But adding to that, you mentioned your business coach. And I think that a lot of times you don't see it because you're in the thick of it. So here's my perfect analogy, because I'm always about analogies, is I had my client appreciation event on Tuesday. Well, I put on some pair of pants that it has been tight in the past, and like I'm trying to lose weight and I'm working on it. And it's been pretty solid. Like that was my goal this year. Did not reach the goal, but I'm on my path. And so Tuesday I show up and I haven't seen a couple of my clients for a while. Like I talked to them on the phone, but I don't see. And they're like, oh my gosh, Charisse, and they paid me the biggest compliment. And I'm like, oh, you're so sweet. They noticed because they haven't seen me. That's the same with your business. Your business coach isn't there every single day unless you're paying them like to be there, but they're not. So once a week, twice, like once every other week or once a month, whatever it may be. And they can see the progress that you're making because you're reporting. And so now it's like, oh, okay, you need an outside person to be able to point that out to you. And so when people try to go it alone, it is not healthy because it's the imposter syndrome. You can't get out of your head sometimes.
Yes, and that I feel like might be a good plug for me here, because I literally tell people like I guess another one of my lines, but I say like, when you're hiring a virtual assistant, it's not in my company, okay? Like, because there are VA companies are a dime a dozen these days, and so I know mine is very different from others. I say hiring a VA is not just about offloading the grunt work to somebody else. It's about unlocking your own potential by tapping into somebody else's skill set and expertise. Like if you're feeling overwhelmed, you're wearing every single hat, you're afraid that someone's not going to understand your vision in the future, what I've noticed is if you're in the beginning stages of your business, if you're like a real solo entrepreneur, if you incorporate a VA, if you have the capital to be able to do it, if you incorporate a VA on the early stages, you have that partner who is in a way equally as invested in your success as you are.
Mhm.
And you're growing together and they're understanding your vision as you go and as you grow, where you're then able to duplicate or I wouldn't say duplicate, but like replicate that idea to other people that you start to bring onto the team, right? It's much easier because sometimes it's hard to find the words to describe what you're talking about. Everyone has a different method of learning, right? And so having somebody else that's been in the thick of it with you
Mhm.
really becomes beneficial. You're not just on this journey alone.
Just to add to that, I think that also there's so much work that I was actually driving yesterday. I drove down to give an eviction notice to one of my renters and I drove back up and I'm like, okay, so it was an hour down, an hour back. That was 2 hours of my time. How much money is that? Had I just paid somebody $20 to send them the form, have them print it out on their own printer and go stick it on the door like I did,
Yeah.
now there's another reason I went down there, but had it only been for that reason, that was an incredible amount of time that I wasted. And so
Yeah.
I look at that same thing with the VA. How much stuff are you doing online that really you could put off to someone else? Because the VA that I had, every time I gave her something, she was done in an hour, where it would have taken me 2 or 3 or 4 hours because I'm not that creative type and she was. And so I think that that's the part is you're actually giving yourself a pay raise when you hire that VA. So I'm going to plug for you because it really is important that you have
Thank you.
yeah.
Yeah, I was at a networking group yesterday. It was like our holiday one. And when I told you before, right, I have Project Outsource, my business. I also have an Etsy store. I also am starting another it's like a novelty. I don't want to talk about it yet, but I'm really pumped about this one. It's women supporting women in a really big way. So I'm excited for that. But essentially, my VA's name is Carmela. I'm at this networking event. It's basically the holiday party. I'm drinking wine with and networking and do all the things, and I just get this text, "Hey, I've uploaded a couple of new designs into the Etsy shop." I'm
Mhm.
like, oh, "Awesome, thank you." She's like, "Also, we got samples in from that manufacturer. They felt cheap. I don't think we should go with them. I'm going to order a couple of more from other places." I'm like, "Yeah, just let me know how much I have to send you." All of these things are being done in the background as I'm out networking, building memories. I could be with my family. I could be, again, my professional life versus my personal life. In a way, I can disappear from my business. And Carmela steps in and she, if a client is messaging, we use Discord, kind of like Slack. If a client is messaging me, she's also in that conversation. She responds on my behalf if I'm doing a podcast,
Mhm.
right? Like there are ways for you to better spend your time. How much are you worth per hour? As to your point.
Mhm.
And on top of all of that, to give you something to laugh about, I talked to my husband about how I'm pretty sure I just pay for my best friend. Like at this point, like
Yeah.
anytime something exciting happens in my business, anytime I have a new idea, I'm like texting my bestie, my VA, right? And she reminds me, she's like, "Remember, Jenna, we are still professional friends." I'm like, "I know." But like it's just I'm not alone on my journey. I'm not sitting in my office by myself all day, every day, even though she's halfway across the world.
Yeah, I know.
There's so many benefits.
I made a point because mine lives in Singapore too, or not Singapore, it's
Yeah.
Philippines. And I'm like, I have got to come meet you. Go on a vacation,
Yes.
the work trip, because I'm coming to have a meeting with my VA.
We'll book it together.
I know, I know.
We'll do a trip together.
I love that. Well, I always ask the question, and we didn't even talk about momhood at all today. So I'm going to ask you the question that if you were sitting on a park bench and this 19-year-old woman who's pregnant comes up right next to you and she sits down, you guys start having a conversation, knowing what you know now about being a mom, any stage, not just beginning stages of momhood, what advice would you give her?
I love this. Everything is a phase. Everything is a stage. I remember getting so excited when my son found his voice and was just like, this, like, just projecting and all these cute sounds. And then after a while, it just sounded like a scream in my ears at all times. And I'm like, I wish you didn't know how to talk. Like, right? Everything is a phase or a stage. I'm going to be very, very vulnerable here in hopes that another mother is out there listening. So my son, and he'll kill me in the future, but that's okay. He's like 8.5 and he's still in pull-ups at night. He is ADHD. There's a whole bunch of reasons why this could be a thing. It bothers us as parents. I want him to be past that stage. I want him to be fully potty trained, like really. But when my cousins were young, my aunt went to the pediatrician in tears because apparently they had pacifiers way longer than they were supposed to. And the pediatrician said, hey, I have great news for you. They're not going to walk down the aisle with passies in their mouth.
Wow.
They're going to grow out of it, like we all do. And so I try to remind myself of that whenever we're going through a stage, if they're learning to talk, if they're learning to walk, if they're acting up in school, they're biting other kids, they're whatever you might be going through. It's a stage, it's a phase. And the great news is we all grow out of it. We're all functioning adults. So that's probably my advice is like, whatever you're going through, it's a cycle. It will end and something new will start.
I've had ones that, as you know, are 25. I love that because I grew up thinking, because I was my aunt used to call me the perfect child, right? Well, I had some siblings that were older that were great examples of what not to do. And so it was very easy for me to watch that and to say, I don't want that and see how it hurt my parents, right? Trauma. I know. That's why I wrote that.
I'm right there with you.
But because of that, it's like I had to be in everything. I had to do everything. I had to excel in everything. So I put this pressure on myself that was unreasonable. And then you're nodding your head of stomach pains, stress, all these different things. And so I raised these kids a little more lax because I didn't want that pressure that I don't remember my parents putting it on me, but I remember myself. And so my kids grow up. I have 4 out of the house now. And I'm like, oh, well, you don't have the same ambition I do. Like a few of them do. But now I'm like, ugh. And then I find myself getting frustrated and judging them. And then I'm like, wait a second. I raise them so that they can make their own choices and do their own thing. So if I don't agree with that, that's on me. That's not on them. I shouldn't be disappointed or I shouldn't be frustrated. And so this is something, again, I'll be very vulnerable right now too. As a mom, I'm going through this. Okay, my kids have their own choices and they have their own brains and they get their own free agency. And I have to sit and watch, and I can give my advice or not if they ask, and let them make a decision from there. And I think it's so hard to have them. Sometimes you know what the outcome is going to be, but they have to go through it themselves. And I'm watching one of my children going through an incredible journey right now because the life choices, and seeing how they've come back like, okay, mom, you're right. But it's nothing horrible, but it's still something where it's like, I wouldn't have done that. But my parents told me not to, like, marry the first person I did. I still married the first person I did. We all make those choices, and I think we have to respect that. And so for you, just because my whole point of telling the story is just because your child isn't that normal child that, they should be out of pull-ups at age 8, that's okay. Because that just means that they're probably excelling at something that, like I have a 9-year-old. I wish that my daughter would do what your son is doing, So comparing to other children is the worst thing we can do.
Yes. My son he's genius. Like he's straight A's. He's about to start baseball in the spring for the first time at 8. And I fully believe he's going to be the best player on the team. And I'm not just saying that, like his hand-eye coordination, he is so athletic. He excels in so many other, and like just the kindest heart, so caring, ADHD, right? It's just, he's incredible. And to your point, he will smoke some other kid in a different area, right? But we all have our flaws, and like it's so hard. And I understand what you're saying. Also, for me, I'm the oldest, but I had growing up risky parent situation. So always trying to make them happy, be the best, excel. And so I'm the same way. And we are one and done. He is our only. And so to that point, we have more of a friendship with him.
Mm-hmm.
Like he's our bro, right? And so it's a different relationship.
Mm-hmm.
And when I'm like, when I'm trying to almost, this is not the right word, but when I'm trying to like demand respect, I've already set the tone early on that we're friends,
Mm-hmm.
right? But like we're friend parents. He understands the line, but he pushes and pushes. And that's because of something that I set
Mm-hmm.
early on because I didn't get that level of friendship with my parents that I so badly craved.
Mm-hmm.
So I completely understand where you're coming from. I mean, like in so many different ways. I can't wait to continue talking to
I
you
know.
outside of this
Yeah.
because it's
Mm-hmm.
just kind of crazy how similar our stories are too.
Mm-hmm. And I think for our listeners, mompreneurs, I hope that you take, that it's okay to have your ups and downs. It's okay that things aren't always perfect. And I think that was the hardest because I have 6 kids and it's okay. I always wanted that perfect child, and I'm thinking, I don't have a perfect child. And here's something. So let's circle around real quick. And again, previous conversations I've had or podcasts where I talk about my little 8-year-old and how the 9 and 10 stage, they go through this prepubescence. I don't know what it is with the body, but all 5 of my kids went psycho crazy. And I hate that stage, right? Well, then I have my little 8-year-old coming up to it. And I'm like, I literally said, please, you're my only hope. And so uh, like 6 months ago, I'm like, oh my gosh, I cannot put this pressure on her. She needs to be able to be who she is. And so she's starting to get that now because she's 9, she's almost 10. And she started crying the other day and she's like, Mom, I'm so sorry. And I go, what? She goes, yeah, I promised I wouldn't be emotional. And I'm like, oh my gosh, we need to have a conversation. Like right now, you are entitled to feel every emotion that you ever need to show it the way that you need. That is not a promise I ever want you to keep. Cry it out, honey. Let's go. And
Yes.
I think that that's the thing is that with our kids, they're not supposed to be perfect because we're not perfect. And these demands that we hope and we pray and we want on our children might not be healthy. So we need to look at that and figure it out. So,
Yeah.
hey.
Yeah. I feel like quite often I word vomit something and I know we all know that feeling. I know that we all have had at least one. I see it in every mom group I'm in at Facebook. Like,
Okay.
guys,
Mhm.
I did it today. I blew up on my child. We all have those moments where I've definitely just been like, oh, what did I just say? Like, that was so damaging. Like, he's
Yeah.
gonna remember this forever. But truthfully, like lucky me, his ADHD rolls right off of him. Same with me too, right? Like we will be at each other's throats. And that's the other thing. He's just like me. He like, oh, I hate that kid. Like he's me. And I'm like, I see what you're doing because I did that.
Yeah.
And then like we'll be at each other's throats. And 2 seconds later, I'm like, hey, come here. Come on, come over here. I want to cuddle with you. And he's like, I don't want to cuddle. I'm like, I didn't ask you. Get over here. We're cuddling. And then we're cuddling and then we're happy. And my husband's looking at us like the two of you are nuts. And I'm like, yeah, mom, that's family for you. Right.
But that's another blessing. My kids that have the ADHD, their forgiveness level is off the chart. I wish I could do that. I'm not that way.
I am too forgiving. But I will also say coming with age, because for listeners, we talked about a lot of things that come with age before we hit record as well.
Mhm.
Coming with age, I'm starting to become less patient or less forgiving just because I'm like, no, I'm done with that. I'm done with people. I'm so forgiving that I've been walked all over,
Yeah.
right? Like, it's okay, it's okay, it's okay. And that is like, it's not okay. Boundaries, right?
Right.
So I see myself becoming less forgiving, but not with him, not with my kids, or my child.
And maybe let me clarify, is it not that you're not less forgiving? It's just you realize, okay, I know that about you. And so I've learned my lesson and I'm not going to make that same mistake again, right?
Yeah.
Like if one of my very good friends came and asked me for money, she's already had 200,000. She's not getting any more out of me, right? So
Yeah.
um I think that that's where I will do anything for her. I'll drop to the world for her. But giving her another dime will never happen.
Yeah.
Ever.
Right. You have to, I like to help people. I want to help people on their journey, but ultimately that's their journey. That's their life. And I can't, you could lead a horse to water,
Yeah,
right? We can
absolutely.
try, but not at my expense anymore.
Exactly. Okay, well,
So
if our listeners wanted to find you because they need help and they should get help with a VA, especially, how do they find you?
You can always go to our website, which is projectoutsource.co. And then we're pretty much on all social media platforms. The handle or the backslash is Jenna M as in Marie, Jenna M Hatch. But yeah, we're on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook. Just look it up, Project Outsource.
All right. Thank you, Jenna. And moms, we talked about a lot of different things. We talked about children. We talked about running our businesses. We talked about taking time for ourselves and just realizing that being, as one of my coaches always said, being imperfectly perfect is what you need to be doing. Just take a step and just keep taking steps. And eventually you will get there. So go out and make it a great day. Beautiful moms, remember, you are unbreakable. Keep illuminating the world with your strength, pursuing your dreams, and reveling in the splendor of motherhood. This is Charisse Walker, bidding you farewell for now. Stay tuned for more empowering conversations on the next episode of the Unbreakable Mompreneurs podcast. Until then, keep shining bright. Signing off with love, Charisse Walker.